this because in my previous role, I had a lot of engagement with the Sharia economy in Indonesia. And I was there at the UMRAH Economic Festival organized by the Central Bank of Indonesia. I was even there last year for the Sharia Economic Festival. It was a beautiful event in Jakarta. And it's not just about the financial part. It covers the halal disputes and every other thing. And that puts you in a unique position. I mean, the IDB, the Indonesia Dispute Board, in terms of the scope of the nature of disputes that actually of you. It's really wide. I congratulate you for your continuous training. I see mediation training that have been organized on a kind of a usual basis. Certification of new mediators. The leadership of IDB is really doing a lot. I kind of quietly follow all these developments behind the scene, and I'm really impressed. Because you need to propose these experts to respond to disputes that will be coming. Indonesia is the largest country in the world, huge Muslim population, huge potentials. Indonesia is now moving from even potentials to action. This is what we were seeing in the past. I'm talking from the position of someone who has visited Indonesia many times, who has interacted with the leaders, economy and the financial sector. So when it comes to overall Sharia economy itself, the first thing we're going to do comes to the conceptual part. You kind of take a step backward and say, what is the basis of Sharia economy? That tells you it is what you call fiqh al-muamalat. Fiqh al-muamalat, because today we call it Islamic commercial law, which is actually broad. And everything you have in muamalat assumes possibility of future dispute. And I'll tell you more about this. The Quranic principle and everything investigation where it's possible to have a dispute. Now, what do you do to avoid dispute? Or what do you do to resolve it? This is actually a divine approach to disputes. And this principle holds to commercial matters as well. That's why Islamic law is a clear requirement of contractual terms. A contract can actually be oral, it can be in writing, but it all depends on the kind of contract. But the terms of the contract have to be clear. That's the first step. If the terms are not clear, definitely you are going to have a dispute in future. So that's number one. The other thing is there's a verse of the Quran which talks about the need to actually have the meeting of mind, or what we call at idem of minds when it comes to contract. The parties have to agree on the terms, and they have to willingly and voluntarily come to the contract. Now, if you meet that, definitely you are exposing the parties to a future dispute. This whole concept is called taradin, and which I have actually, in my previous research, I call it what you call taradin principle. And verse of the Quran, I guess the Quran 4 is I think verse 5. So it says, Ya ayyuhalladhina la ta'kulu amwalakum bainakum bil batil illa an takuna tijaratan an taradin minkum. Taradin minkum, who believe, do not eat up the property amongst yourself and household, except in a situation where you contract and there is a mutual consent. Both parties agree on the agreement and they agree that there is a valuable consideration. So this is what they call the Taradin principle. So that willingness on both sides helps a lot. And when you build that into the point I mentioned, that it's extremely important to have clear contractual terms. Once you build this, that tells you that the possibility of having future will minimize. And that verse actually, and that's what Allah also said, In Allah, that, oh, do not kill yourself. You now be wondering how the issue of killing yourself comes after a contractual issue related to terrorism, making it minds, coming together to agree on terms. Because you don't do things properly the way the creator who created you and I has told you to do things, it could actually lead to disastrous measures. We've seen people, who have some of the cryptos, who lost a lot of money in the past few years in cryptocurrencies, committed even suicide. So it's when you interpret some of those verses and their modern application, you should be able to kind of identify the key issues. And this is why it's very important. So broadening principle is extremely important when it comes to the parties coming together from day one, agreeing on the terms of the contract. That will actually help in the disputes. And actually emphasis on debt-based contracts. When you go to someone and you say, please, Omar, I need $100 and in the future, that is extremely kind of different. In fact, that is encouraged to have, you have a written contract or witnesses. I will come to that discussion because it's extremely important, because modern day economy have this debt-based economy where people need to kind of get financing or loan to finance their trade. In such a situation, what do we do to prevent disputes in future? I'll come back to that. That will take us to the longest verse of the Quran, which we call Ayatul Dain. I'm going to have a discussion later, to see how we can use that. Now, the third point is when it comes to commercial law, the enforceability in the court, clear evidential rules must be established. Now, when you are drafting a case, to prevent you have to also ensure that when the dispute rise, you have an appropriate forum, whether it's a court of law, an arbitration center, or a mediation center, or even both. Here you can enforce the agreement itself. And finally, it's also very important to ensure that Sharia economy, you have to ensure the terms are Sharia compliant. And when it comes to resolution, mediation, arbitration, there are verses and even, hadith. When I talk about hadith, I always call it prophetic incidents. That's my interpretation, incidents of the prophet. Now, there are actually clear-cut precedents that emphasize need for having a settlement agreement for mediation or your award from arbitration being Sharia compliant. You cannot say you are in the Sharia economy, you have a transaction which fulfills the needs of your religion or the other, and at the end of the day, the award of settlement agreement actually has an element that doesn't actually comply with the Sharia itself. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to kind of quickly, and again, we are still discussing the conceptual part, even though in my analysis, I'm taking you through the practical dimension of it. Please note your questions. I really want to take a lot of questions from you. Let's have the Q&A sessions because this is that is hugely relevant today. I thank the organizers for giving me this topic. Now, how do you resolve disputes? The question here is, we're talking about Sharia economy. What is the Sharia? Does the Sharia have any process of dispute resolution? Has the Sharia established any way of resolving dispute? We only know Islam, some of us, that Islam is about, okay, you have Muslims, when it's time for Salah, they go to pray, fast during Ramadan, go to Hajj if they have enough money, they pay their zakat, they believe in Allah, God. But what about this settlement? Are they just mimicking the conventional way of resolving disputes? Or they have unique practices embedded to resolve disputes? So let me quickly walk through the conceptual part in the next few minutes. Now, I presented this slide in particular 2011 as part of doctoral research in Harvard, and able to kind of discuss some of these processes, which actually were based on books of fiqh itself, Islamic jurisprudence. So deep research was conducted on each of these processes you have on the screen. So I'm going to walk you through them very quickly. I know we don't have much time, but this is a topic that I always like to discuss. But let's see how it goes. Now, what I'd like to say is that the whole body of students or Sharia economy is so rich with original processes of dispute management. Mind my word, I said dispute management resolution because the spectrum is wider in Islamic law. It's wider. It's not just about resolving disputes. Islamic law will prioritize even avoiding those disputes rather than resolving them. Try to avoid disputes. Once you introduce just mechanisms to avoid enough disputes, then that will reduce the backlog or the workload on the dispute resolution centers and the courts. Definitely, you must still have disputes, but you kind of reduce the workload, reduce the backlog. That helps you kind of focus on the most important part of the disputes, why you have actually reduced the number of disputes. This is, the whole of dispute management in Islamic law, which underpins the Sharia economy itself. So let's start. The first thing discussed by the Sharia scholars, the fuqaha, that's the Sharia consult, the early scholars of Islam, the adjudication, yani qada. How do you dispute? You have verses of the Quran on this as well, So qada is extremely important when it comes to adjudication of disputes. There's nothing wrong having a court which has competent jurisdiction to resolve Sharia economic disputes. This is allowed, and this is established by the early scholars, and they have made reference to the Quran, the Hadith. There is not a day all days. We don't have a master class on this, so speech. So that's why I'm just kind of over all this. Hopefully, in future we'll have time to kind of discuss in detail each of these. But the first thing is kind of adjudication, competent court. And you have books by early scholars like Al-Saf and a number of others. Even the book of Al-Ahkam al-Sultaniyat of Mawardi, for those who are familiar with Islamic, I'm mentioning some of these names because it's important to know that there's a whole body of knowledge and a court procedure, evidential rules, procedural rules. What kind of rules do you getting to the end? What is the qualification of judges? How to appoint a judge? How will a judge decide a dispute? How a judge cannot even put when he's angry or when he's hungry. Little things like this are regulated under Islamic law. So the Sharia economy itself is Islamic law and with some of these processes. And you can transpose this process to a modern arbitration mediation. You can imagine somebody sitting as an arbitrator. I don't think that has ever been raised. The conventional discussion of arbitration. No, they just talk about independence, no conflict of interest. That's it. But have you ever thought of if you are hungry and angry, you cannot see it as a judge or as an arbitrator? This is something new, I'm sure, to the world, but it's not new to the Sharia economy. That's number one. So Qadar is actually a well-discussed book. In fact, it's one of the most discussed topics when it comes to dispute resolution in the early books of scholars, Muslim scholars. Now, the second, which is another process for resolving this, is what they call an-nasiha. Now, we developed this as part of our research back then. And that's already about 12, 13 years ago. Yeah, while I was doing my postdoctoral fellowship in Harvard, and before then, my PhD, was actually on this topic as well. So we have developed some of this supervisor at that time. Nasiha actually is a hadith that talks about Nasiha. Nasiha advice. But the hadith of Nasiha will tell you Nasiha it's God to Prophet, it's to the Muslims. So from that hadith, we developed this whole concept of Nasiha as a potential dispute prevention and mitigation mechanism. Because what counseling, you're having an issue already, you're having a problem with another company, or you have a problem with your bank, and you seek advice, that itself could help the kind of de-escalate the issue. So this is actually what we call counseling. So it can help to prevent the dispute or to prevent the escalation of dispute ultimately. And it can be built into mediation as well. Because mediation itself actually, as you all know, you're all experts in mediation. A mediator is not expected to make a binding decision. So you're expected to facilitate the discussion, to help the parties reach a settlement agreement. So from that perspective itself, you give advice, you counsel, you tell them to see the bigger picture, tell them, we have to expand the pie. People are fighting for is pie, or what Malaysians call karipap. Karipap. I lived in Malaysia for many years. So when you have this kind of small meat pie or karipap, two parties are fighting for it. Now, how do you resolve that? Your role is to allow them, to advise them, to facilitate them, to see the bigger picture. And the bigger picture means a small curry pie or meat pie or curry pie and expand it to be big. And both parties will eat bigger. So how do we expand it? That's your expertise as a mediator to help advise them. So when you are facilitating amicable resolution of this mediator, definitely you will use Naseha as well. So you can see how they tie together. So that takes me to Sulhu itself, which is mediation. Sulh is a whole concept established in the Quran itself. You have a lot of verses that refer to this, of course, hadith. But one condition actually in hadith, I think, by Ibn Omar, where there's emphasis on the need to ensure that every condition or clause stated in the settlement agreement has to actually be in line with the original principles of Sharia economics. So you cannot violate. So you can stipulate any condition of a dispute, but make sure it is in line with the principles of Sharia. That's the only condition. So this is actually who is developed in the Quran. I mean, you have a verse in Surah Al-Hujurat, which talks about parties fighting two believers of fighting fast people you should resolve it, both of them. That's one. And another verse talks about that mediation is the best everything you do. So if your religion, I mean, those who are Muslim, it's telling you that to actually prefer mediation to resolve your disputes as much as you can, then that gives you a clear path to resolving disputes. So this is something, and even in family disputes, in commercial disputes, these are well established and sunnah. So now the next one is tahkim. Tahkim actually is what we call arbitration balance. And again, for those of you who do not know, a lot of books of early scholars have focused on this. Some have dedicated chapters to this whole concept of arbitration. So it's not something new. So when it comes to the Sharia economy, you have principles you can draw from. Of course, there's nothing wrong in adopting conventional role and other model rules and model laws. It's okay. You can adopt them. I think the essence of this presentation is to open the eyes of listeners to say, listen, there are a lot within Sharia economic stuff you can deploy or principles you can incorporate. So Tahkim arbitration is well developed by the scholars, and you have chapters of some of the books on Islamic law and Islamic commercial law that focus on tahkim or arbitration. Now, the next one is medab. Of course, you know what is medab, where you start with mediation and you end with, and you can have where you start with arbitration and end with mediation. This is incorporated in most of the modern rules of arbitration and even mediation. Recently, we developed our mediation rules, which will be soon in the next few days or week, and we'll be announcing this all once we issue the mediation rules. Have elements of MedArb. So the next one is Muhtasib. Muhtasib is less known, called the Ombudsman. Ombudsman is Muhtasib. Okay, let me explain it this way. For those of you who are familiar with the verse of the Quran, where God Almighty says, those who kind of amr bil ma'ruf, not hearing the munkar, enjoin people to do good and tell them to feed or eschew anything evil. That whole concept of telling people not to do bad things but to do good things is encapsulated into the whole theory of Muhtasim. Now, Muhtasim is more of a dispute mitigation mechanism, ombudsman. And in some cases, you have financial ombudsman, and you have ombudsman for different sectors. They are more of dispute mitigation experts. And I'm sure maybe you have that concept in Indonesia, and they help to review are emerging. We try to kind of resolve them and help to make recommendations to improve the administrative skills of those companies or the government authorities. So Ombudsman is well developed globally, and it has its basis in the Sharia. The relevance of the whole concept of Ombudsman in the Sharia economy. Now, the seventh process I would like to share today is what we call Mazalim. These are special tribunals for redress, and they are for serious economic issues involving high-level officials in the government. This process has been used also throughout the Islamic history, where you kind of try some special cases involving very high people in the society that have serious economic implications on the state. And finally, fatwa of a mufti. I know there are a lot of muftis in Indonesia. They give fatwas. You have National Fatwa Council. I think I've met with some of the members or the chairman when I came last year to Jakarta. But the question here is, have you ever thought for a while, what is the relevance of this fatwas being made by scholars? They could make a fatwa on economic. I know that even many things are referred to the National Fatwa Committee. Those issues relate to the Sharia economy. I've met with them. I know of talking from the position of somebody who has interacted with some of the scholars there in the past. So, but have you ever paused for a think, what are these people doing? Is it relevant to what we are doing as mediators, as arbitrators, as district position experts? I'll tell you, there's a lot of relevance. In my research, again, in 2011 at Harvard Law School in the US, I added this as findings that expert determination. It's one concept in see from the role of Mufti and they give fatwa, particularly on economic issues relating to Sharia economy. When they give a fatwa, not a binding decision like a court of law. It's an award which you can enforce, like you have an award under the New York Convention of 1958. No, it's more of an advice kind of statement from an expert, which will help to solve a dispute, mitigate a dispute, or even prevent a dispute. So this is how we look at it from the analysis. And when you look at this and actually transpose this into the practical implication of it, you'll have seen that many Tawa or Fatawi have helped to resolve disputes or prevent disputes. So I want you to bear this back of your mind that the whole concept of Sharia economy wide. Sharia economy is not just about buying and selling economic things. No. What underpins those things are these principles of dispute prevention, dispute mitigation, and dispute resolution. Now, to do this part, I would like to say that a breach often leads to dispute, and this has the potential to damage business relationships irreparably. And this is why I think it's very important for us to ensure that the contractual terms are well drafted. This is something, again, I'll keep emphasizing till the end of this keynote speech. Because when it comes to the Sharia economy, we have to find ways to sustain the relationship. If you don't sustain the relationship, that will affect economic matters, and that will ultimately affect the economic development in the country itself. And resolving this, then you have less money. So this is why it's important to verify contractual terms. I just shared the picture of one of our latest on Islamic contract law, where we clarify some of these principles to guide people who are contracting the Sharia economy itself, which recently and now look at global trends, mediation, and arbitration. Let's start with mediation. Of course, there is this increasing trend of generalization of mediation practice. Back then, about 17 to 20 years ago, when I first trained as a mediator, as a young mediator, the first thing I was coming to mind was, we were lawyers. So people were saying, how come we are also trained as mediator? How will you make money from legal practice as a lawyer? Things are mediated. That was the view 20 years ago. And it was actually concerning to us. I went for the training APR and mediation, but when people started telling me this, I started doubting myself. I was doing the right thing. So the momentum was picking up gradually at that time. But nowadays, everything changed. It's full professionalization of mediation. Look at what the board is doing. Find mediators, on a weekly basis, and having trainings all over. Unique, and you have it as well globally. And again, at the OIC Arbitration Center, which I represent, we will be rolling out some mediation. But our focus will be more of cross-border mediation of disputes. When an Indonesian investor invests in, let's say, Turkey, or a Turkish investor invests in Indonesia, it's a dispute. How do we help to come through mediation? And how do we ensure that the settlement agreement is enforceable across border through the courts? So this is something unique, and we have introduced this in our mediation, in the draft mediation rules that will be issuing soon once the board approves it. So nowadays, we see more of this professionalization of mediation practice. And I tell you, for those who are mediators, who are active in mediation, you're going to make a lot of money in mediation. Ask me why. Volume of that will be coming to you will be a lot. And so you can make money. You charge per second or per hour, depending on your kind of fees. So it's something and you can make more money than even practicing oil. Something many people never knew 20 years ago when we were first trained as mediators. But now there's more of professionalization of mediation practice. This is an increasing global trend we have seen, and it's a welcoming kind of trend which we hope will continue. And at the level of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, will try to enhance the training at the global level. And relevant will collaborate with the IDB to kind of support this training and certify international mediators, maybe in Indonesia as well. So we'll be very happy to explore these areas of collaboration so that Indonesia mediators can actually help handle even international disputes. So we'll come up with this, program soon, inshallah. Now, the next trend we have seen is the number of training programs of mediation for halal-related disputes. And I'm sure IDB has also focused on this. So, yes, mediation almost the same globally, but we have to still emphasize that there are some key differences we have to identify when it comes to the Sharia economy or the halal-related. It's important. The mediator has to be competent. We talk about legal capacity. We talk about being eligible in the subject matter, which includes Sharia economic law. And we also talk about ensuring that the final decision, which is the settlement agreement, does not conflict any principle of the Sharia itself. It's unique. So I understand the life training. And at OIC Arbitration Center, we'll also be running all this kind of training. We are also very happy to collaborate with the IDB, train Indonesian mediators in this regard. So we are seeing this trend globally, and we hope it will. When it comes to the Sharia economy or the halal economy globally, I was looking at some of the recent data. They said the halal economy is about $4.2 trillion. These are very wrong statistics. That's why I'm not putting those statistics here. I've refrained from statistics that are not reliable. The halal economy globally actually will be over 20 trillion US dollars. Yeah. Indonesia alone is huge. So you talk about other countries. So it depends on how they define the Sharia economy globally. It goes beyond just being a 4.2 trillion US dollars. I believe it's more than 20 trillion US dollars. Okay. Now, another trend we have seen is the increasing use of what they call the multi-tiered clauses in Sharia compliant agreements, which prefers mediation. In my previous role as CEO of the International Islamic Liquidity Management Corporation, IILM in Malaysia, and having been the general counsel or the head of the legal team of that organization for many years, we have actually called multi-tiered clauses when it comes to the dispute resolution clauses in our sukuk transactions, where we have to draft the multi-tiered kind of way. Starts with negotiation, continues with mediation, and if parties are not able to resolve the dispute within a certain number of days, it goes for arbitration. While we still allow the parties to actually proceed for litigation, they can still go to the court if things actually fall apart. So, multi-tiered kind of clause, I'm not sharing that today because we have limited time, because that requires a lot of analysis on how you draft it and how you ensure the parties sustain their business relationship ultimately. This is something we have used. That's why I just felt the practical dimension, I should share it with you. I have used it years for multi-billion-dollar transactions, and I feel it's relevant. These are some of the things when it comes to the Sharia economy on a global scale. Now, to sustain business relationships and Sharia economy, Asian seems a better alternative. Because you see, part of the role of the OIC Arbitration Center which I represent, is to create a platform for ADR, arbitration, mediation. Why? Because OIC, and Indonesia is a member of the OIC, they want to actually promote intra-trade amongst themselves. Turkey trades with Indonesia, Indonesia trades with Malaysia, Malaysia trades with Nigeria, Nigeria trades with other countries, Saudi Arabia. So boosting the intra-trade among the OIC is one of the fundamental objectives of this center. It's really unique, and it's important for us to do that. But to do that, we have to sustain business relationships. And how do we sustain relationships to promote Sharia economy? To look at what processes are more relevant here. And that's where mediation and arbitration comes to play. So it's important for me to actually explain this background, for you to understand why my center was set up and why we will be moving forward, we'll be forging ahead to actually implement this objective and collaborate with all the international dispute resolution centers within the OIC member countries, including Indonesia, including the IDB, to ensure that we sustain business relationships, we promote the Sharia economy, and of course, we ensure our economies develop together in the OIC region. Now, the next point I would like to emphasize on is the settlement agreement from mediation, how enforceable it is. It's something we have seen again globally. I'm sure there was a keynote address, or there will be address on the Singapore Convention on Mediation, or what they call the Singapore Mediation Convention, which is a great achievement under the United Nations Commission for International Trade Law on Silk Road. It's a great achievement on their part. The one thing I was contemplated there, the ability for you to enforce a mediation settlement agreement in a court of law or in another country through the courts. And this is something unique. This is something we are seeing globally, and something that I feel is relevant to the Sharia. And is Sharia compliant? Muslims should embrace this. The Muslim countries should embrace this. There's nothing bad about this. It's really good. It will promote trade among the Muslim countries. So Muslim countries are encouraged to embrace the Singapore Convention on Mediation, and part of the global trend we have seen. And such settlement agreement enforced through cross-border kind of means, or perhaps a binding contract. Countries, they feel once you have a contract in another country, you can enforce that contract. So when you have a settlement agreement from a mediation, you can actually enforce countries as a contract. Example is Turkey. In Turkey, if you have settlement agreements signed by the parties, you can enforce it across border. You can enforce it in Turkey. Now, the second one is enforceability under the relevant laws. This is a bit relevant to what we have the Singapore Convention on Mediation, where Article 3 says each party to the convention shall enforce a settlement agreement in accordance with its code of procedure and under the conditions laid down in this convention. So this is something unique also, and I think it's revolutionary at the global level. This should be embraced by Muslims. This will support the Sharia economy locally and globally. So this actually is the second way of enforcing a settlement agreement across border. Now, the third method, ladies and gentlemen, is through MedApp. And this is something that I have been thinking about for close to a decade. And I'm glad this is now being discussed in the literature, where you can actually have a content award and enforce it under the New York Convention of 1958. So the proceedings actually start with settlement agreement, you have mediation, and the mediation concludes with a settlement agreement by the parties. Once they sign the agreement, the next thing is, okay, how do I enforce the agreement? Because I'm an Indonesian investor, I'm invested in Malaysia. There is a dispute with the Malaysian government and I try to resolve the dispute with the other party, have an agreement. But how do I enforce Malaysia? So what you do basically is, at the end of the settlement agreement, duly signed by the parties, you can actually now have what we call ad hoc arbitration by appointing the arbitrator on the spot. And once you appoint the arbitrator from that level, the arbitrator will convert the settlement agreement and discuss the issues with the parties, and you agree there and then that the settlement agreement, yes, should be adopted as a consent award. And once that is done, you now have an award from an ad hoc arbitration. And mind you, as you all know, arbitration can actually be in person, it can be virtual, through expedited procedures, where parties just submit documentation. You just deal on documents. So this can actually be adopted for this ad hoc arbitration. So when you have the consent award is actually enforceable and is valid and enforceable, recognizable and enforceable under the New York Convention of 1958. So these are ways you can actually enforce a mediation settlement agreement. And these are the trends we are seeing globally. And I'll tell you, at OIC Arbitration Center, which I represent, we have built this into our draft mediation rules that will be issued soon. Because we actually are players at the global level in terms of dealing with cross-border disputes rather than just focusing on countries. And I hope some of this explanation helped. Please prepare your questions. I'm very happy to question practical questions on some of these trends. Now, the next part of my presentation is on arbitration. Let's look at the global trend, at least the most important ones that relate to the Sharia economy. The first thing I would like to say is that there's an organization called the AOFI. AOFI is based in Bahrain, an international standard setting body for Sharia economic policy. And it is called the Accounting and Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institutions. It was established by various countries. I know of a fact that Sharia partly adopts some of the Sharia standards, and these are actually implemented by the central bank and I think the financial regulatory body in Indonesia as well. So when it comes to AOFI, AOFI has issued the call standard on arbitration. And this standard, I think it's published in 2005 or thereabout. That is quite unique. And it provides an Islamic financial institutions the principles on how they should resolve their disputes through arbitration. Article 1 talks about application of the standard to all financial disputes. Article 2 talks about the binding nature of Islamic arbitration, and there's recognition of even the appointment of non-Muslims as arbitrators. Again, the award must comply with the Sharia. Now, when you look at this, yes, coming from the Muslim world, I have done research on this previously where I have looked at convergence between the AOFI standard and the arbitral arbitration rules and how we should kind of find this to forge ahead at the global level. So this is quite unique. So I believe in more of convergence. In most cases, you don't need to reinvent the wheel because most of these are universal. So this is something unique, and I think people should be aware that there is a standard for Sharia economy at the global level, but it has not been adopted by many countries. Countries are not using it, but it's there. It's better I highlight this. So that's the first thing I would like to say. The second point is examples of international arbitral institutions offering services of Sharia economic. The pioneering body that did this actually was the Kuala Lumpur Regional Station. Yes, I see a hand up.
Yeah, I think I request for Mr. Umar, maybe we can pursue the Q&A sessions because I see from the audience there are several participants who would like to raise the questions. So before we entering the Q&A sessions, please give one more round of applause to Mr. Umar. Baik, kita akan masuki sesi tanya jawab. Saya persilakan kepada para peserta untuk memberikan pertanyaan. Silakan menggunakan bahasa Indonesia, nanti saya akan bantu untuk mentranslasinya. Silakan. Disorot kok, disorot. Bisa disorot. I will allow the participant to ask question in bahasa Indonesia, Mr. Umar. I will translate to you later.
Baik, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm sorry, saya berbahasa Indonesia, Prof. Saya Gus Hairi, mahasiswa doktor dulu di Malaysia IIUM.
Masya Allah.
Masya Allah. Senang sekali berjumpa dengan Prof kembali. Kalau sekarang bertugas sebagai hakim di Pengadilan Agama di Indonesia di Banten, berharap bisa silaturahim kembali dengan Prof di Turki ya. Mudah-mudahan bisa bertemu lagi di Turki sama Prof ke depannya. Saya tidak bertanya panjang lebar, hanya bersilaturahim saja dengan beliau karena memang betul-betul beliau ini adalah dosen saya waktu di Malaysia S2 terlebih dahulu.
Mungkin komentar tentang hal tersebut dalam konteks pekerjaan gitu Mas, sedikit saja.
Terkait dengan penjelasan dari Prof. UMRAH tadi, ini berkaitan dengan kompetensi kami sebagai hakim di Pengadilan Agama terkait masalah perkembangan ekonomi syariah, juga alternatif penyelesaian sengketa melalui mediasi dan arbitrase yang berkaitan perbankan syariah. Kami perlu banyak belajar terkait masalah perbankan syariah dan cara penyelesaiannya, apalagi terkait masalah arbitrase dan juga termasuk berkaitan dengan eksekusi putusan terkait yang berkaitan dengan ekonomi syariah. Demikian saja, berharap bisa berjumpa dengan Prof ke depannya. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, he's your former students back in Malaysia. He's currently work as a judge in the religious court in Banten province, Indonesia. And he mentioned just now that the Sharia mechanism of mediations, dispute settlements has been used in his daily works, especially in the economic banking, Sharia economic and Sharia banking, to settle several disputes. So he just want to put a comment. He hope to meet you again in Turkey.
Yeah, inshallah. Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to meet him here. You know, it's always a pleasure to professors when you meet former students and you see them doing great things. And I'm so happy to hear that he's doing very well, supplying some of the disputes. May Allah bless his efforts. And of course, I look forward to welcoming you to Turkey anytime you're here. For those of you who want to kind of comment or ask further questions, my LinkedIn page can actually be accessed. You can actually send me, for this brother, he can send me my personal message, LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is from Sadie, and I will send my contacts or email to him whenever he's around and meet up. And I also look forward to coming to Indonesia physically soon because my collaboration with Professor, the head of this IDB clinic, and we really want to continue this collaboration. We want to invite him also to Turkey. We want to work with him on many projects, and hopefully you'll be seeing me there soon.
Thank you very much. Alhamdulillah. Jadi beliau juga senang, bersyukur karena ilmunya dapat dimanfaatkan. Beliau minta untuk add beliau di LinkedIn, sebagaimana yang ada di cover paparannya itu, sehingga nanti bisa berkomunikasi dan beliau siap untuk menyambut di Turki. Beliau juga akan mengatakan masih akan datang ke Indonesia untuk beberapa kolaborasi lainnya. Baik. Next question. Memperkenalkan diri dulu.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Oke, sebelumnya perkenalkan nama saya Andi Akbar Gustiawan, mahasiswa program studi ilmu hukum, masih semester 2, Pak. Nah, jadi I'm sorry sir, cause I'm speak bahasa. Oke, jadi pertanyaannya seperti yang dapat kita lihat bersama, di Indonesia ini kan perekonomian syariahnya berkembang pesat. Nah, namun masih terbatas tuh pada sektor perbankan dan juga pendanaannya. Kedepannya, apa sektor-sektor ekonomi syariah lainnya yang akan berkembang dan harus dipersiapkan mekanisme mediasinya di Indonesia? Terima kasih.
Thank you. So,
Thank you, sir.
This gentleman is a law student from Raja Ali Haji Maritime University here in Riau Islands province. He was asking the question that currently the Sharia economic in Indonesia is growing, but notably only on the banking and financing sectors. So his main question is, in the future, what will be another sector of Sharia economy that might be developing and thus requiring the mediations alternative or solutions to be prepared? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Waiter, and I'd like to thank the brother who asked the question, Raja Ali Maritime. Yes, as he said, the Sharia economy in Indonesia is growing very well now. During my last visit to Jakarta over last year, I met with a number of banks, and there are a lot of mergers, and it's really, really picking up. I think Bank Sharia and business actually it's a merger of a number. Yes, we are seeing a lot of developments in the banking and finance sector. Now, other sectors are looking under the leadership of the governor of the central bank here, Dr. Perry, who I have worked with very closely in the previous role of the CEO of the IILM in Malaysia. Dr. Perry has really changed the landscape of the Sharia economy in Asia. You know, the Central Bank of Indonesia, which is called Bank Indonesia, not only actually focusing on the financial part. The role of the bank is monetary policy and the economy. And Dr. Perry, with the support of I think, the vice president or the former vice president, they have worked together to develop this. And that's why you had the Sharia Economic Festival, which they started many years ago. And I've personally attended many of those events in Jakarta. And when you get to the Sharia Economic Festival, it's not about banking and finance only. Of course, there are banking sessions, but you also have, relating to halal dressing, halal travel. Last time, the Hajj Fund of Indonesia also organized an event, the Sharia economy event, Hajj alone is huge. And whether you like it or not, there are disputes. There are disputes. People who have contributed, who have paid their Hajj, there are a lot of disputes coming. So the economy actually involves the Hajj component, the pharmaceutical, the halal component. So you have all this as well. And even we talk about people buying shares and stocks. Basically, that itself can be a lot of disputes are emanating from there. So I think we have seen a lot. You see, I'm talking from the perspective of someone who actually has very good knowledge of the Sharia economy in Indonesia, personally participated in many of the events there. Yes, what is visible to the world, it's the Islamic banking, Islamic finance, but the current governor of the Central Bank of Indonesia, Pak Perry, has done more to broaden the scope of the Sharia economy, to expose the rest of it, even fashion. I mean, Indonesia is a hub for fashion when it comes to Sharia fashion, and the country should be proud of it. This is what we're seeing. So, fashion, halal pharmaceuticals, and we talk about these are aspects that I believe are being developed. The government should focus more on this as well and try to see how they can develop it more. Of course, for you mediators and arbitrators, you have more disputes to settle. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pada prinsipnya yang disampaikan oleh Pak Umar adalah memang pada saat ini sektor ekonomi syariah di perbankan dan keuangan masih mendominasi, tetapi kedepannya itu harus dipandang sebagai fundamental atau basis dari perkembangan perekonomian syariah di sektor-sektor yang lain. Karena perkembangan ekonomi di sektor-sektor yang lain itu juga akan menggunakan sarana perekonomian perbankan dan pendanaan syariah, seperti misalnya sektor properti dan seterusnya. Nah, yang kedua yang disampaikan oleh Pak Umar adalah bahwa Indonesia sendiri memiliki banyak sumber daya terkait dengan bagaimana rencana pengembangan sektor-sektor ekonomi syariah yang lain. Banyak ahli-ahli perekonomian syariah yang ada di Indonesia yang saat ini terus bersama dengan pemerintah dan para pelaku usaha lainnya itu mengembangkan hal-hal apa yang kemudian akan menjadi peluang gitu. Jangan lupa bahwa Indonesia sendiri juga merupakan pangsa pasar dan produsen dari perekonomian halal global gitu. Artinya ke depan kombinasi antara fundamental perbankan dan sektor keuangan syariah dengan pasar perekonomian halal itu akan menimbulkan akan menjadi berkembang, dan di dalamnya itu akan banyak dibutuhkan peran-peran arbitrase maupun mediasi. Demikian.
Okay, thank you sir, and I hope I can meet to you in University Maritim Raja Ali Haji. Thank you sir.
Thank you. Inshallah. Okay, another questions from the President of the Indonesian Dispute Board.
Alright, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Professor Umar Hosseini, Secretary General, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, Arbitration Center. Thank you very much because you have allocated your valuable time to share your knowledge and also experience about economic Sharia dispute resolutions. Basically, Indonesia Dispute Board now is focusing on providing a premium Sharia, economic Sharia dispute resolution services for domestic disputes in Indonesia. So that's why Indonesia Dispute Board would like to collaborate and work closely with OICAC in the near future. And we are going also to visit you in Istanbul, Turkey, and we can have a coffee discussion in Bosporus Strait. So, and then I want to ask one question. If we have a cross-border economic Sharia dispute and the contract or akad in Sharia, can we settle the dispute in Istanbul or in other OIC countries, and how it can be enforced? How it can be enforced, the possibility to enforcement the mediated agreement in Indonesia or in other countries. Because if it is conventional, international or cross-border dispute, so we comply. Maybe some countries comply to International Singapore Convention on Mediation, but Indonesia, unfortunately, Indonesia is not signed yet the convention, Singapore Convention until now. So how we can enforce our mediated agreement in Indonesia or in other country if Indonesia still not signed yet International Singapore Convention? And then I have a suggestion to OIC AC. I think for conventional arbitrations, especially to recognize international or foreign arbitral award, we comply with the New York Convention 1958. But I think we need also to consider in the future how Islamic countries, so we have our own International Convention on Economic Sharia, arbitral awards recognition. So I think it can also apply to other countries. So I think this is our suggestion. And also Indonesia Dispute Board together with OICAC in the future, I think it's better that we can jointly organize International Economic Sharia mediator and arbitrator. So I think if it is can be done by both organizations, so our mediator and arbitrator can be recognized not only in Indonesia or in Istanbul or Turkey, but also will be recognized in other around 40, I think 56 OIC countries. So I think it is our suggestions, and please keep in contact. So we hope that both organizations, OIC, AC and IDB, we can work together and then we can do something together for both countries in the future. Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you. Please give your comment.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Professor, and again, thank you for this question. And you've raised fundamental issues, and I think these are very important issues that will really transform the global landscape of Sharia economic system. Now, you mentioned the premium services you're introducing for dispute resolution in Sharia economy. It's really kind of good, and it's a welcome development. Thank you for your kind of activeness all the time. I'll be very happy to collaborate one way or the other. And question, yes, cross-border dispute. Yeah, it's possible to have cross-border Sharia economic disputes, and where it's stipulated, it's actually, I think, it's really the arbitration rules of 2023 of OIC arbitration, which is my center. That's the only arbitration rules here specifically stated that parties can actually state that Islamic law is the applicable law of the dispute. You know, in arbitration, we have what we call lex arbitri, which mostly regulates the general part of arbitration. We also have what they call lex se. Lex se regulates substantive aspect. So, in our arbitration rules, parties can stipulate that the applicable law will be Islamic law, and this will be binding. So it is possible to have this kind of dispute resolved if there are cross-border sharing economic disputes, Indonesian investors, so they can actually have this resolved in Istanbul. That's the platform we provide. That's why we established OIC to provide that cross-border for dispute resolution. So it's possible to resolve it in Istanbul. It's possible to say, okay, we're going to resolve it in Indonesia once the parties agree. So this is the essence of having the mediation clause. And in our mediation that will be issued shortly, we do have the model mediation parties can include it into their contract, which allows you to have mediation either in Istanbul or in Jakarta or in Kuala Lumpur. But we'll be very happy to. We have the state of the art to hold these mediation facilities. And of course, we can also virtually. Yeah. And how can it be enforced? Yes, after a settlement agreement, you know, recall what I explained. Yes, Indonesia is not the Singapore mediation. Yeah, hopefully it will become a signatory later, but it's important to boost kind of you know, foreign direct investment so that investors will come and invest in Indonesia. So the government perhaps all this. Now, in the interim, so Indonesia is not a signatory to that convention yet. It doesn't mean a cross-border settlement agreement cannot be enforced. As I said earlier, if Indonesia actually has not ratified the Singapore Mediation Convention, you can consider forcing a settlement agreement for mediation through the MEDAP process. So that settlement agreement is converted to a consent board, ad hoc arbitration, and that can proceed under the New York Constitution of 1958. So that's one option. The other option is enforced as a binding contract. Here, you just say, okay, this contract we have made, you go to the Indonesian court, or you go to the court of the other party. Here you seek to enforce the agreement, then you can actually proceed for enforcement proceedings. So for me, it's possible. Now, when it comes to you know, facing countries going beyond the New York Convention, having a convention among themselves, to be able to have cross is doable, and this is a beautiful idea. It's a welcome suggestion, but it requires the OIC to kind of come up with a treaty relating to this. And we will agree to push for this, discuss this at a very high level, and see whether we can mobilize parties to agree to this suggestion. But it's something we feel is necessary, and we'll do it, inshallah. And finally, last point regarding the collaboration, we should have a global record to certify economic mediators and arbitrators to be recognized as global mediators. I think this is something also doable. We will be very happy to collaborate and to get this so that Indonesian mediators and arbitrators will be recognized not only in Indonesia, they'll be recognized globally. At least, if not globally, at least 57 or back countries. And I think that would be a very good thing for you. And finally, on this, I time to complete the slides. There are a lot of slides. Something I wanted to explain earlier in terms of the rule of YCAC. We are coming up with the list of arbitrators. No, we have list. We are also working on list of mediators. But for mediators, they have to be certified. That relates to your suggestion to have these globally recognized mediators. We need to train them first, and we need to collaborate with you, with IDB itself, to be able to train these mediators, to understand all these intricacies, the dynamics of the urban landscape of Sharia economy, investment and commercial aspects, so that they will be prepared, able to kind of mediate kind of disputes. Once they go through the whole certification program and they pass the exam, then we'll certify them YC level.
Thank you very much. Please give applause to Mr. Umar. So thank you once again for the great presentations and very thorough answering all our questions. We are looking forward for the next development from the OSCE. Hopefully, we in Indonesia also try to convince our government to be more active global player in signing the conventions. So our aims for our mediators to be recognized globally will be possibles will be possibles in the futures. Uh, thank you once again. I will close the sessions. Yeah, I will set your screen in our mind screen so that we can have a pictures together with you, even though it's digitally. Please bear with us for a couple of minutes.
Boleh satu pertanyaan?
Satu aja Pak, layar dia aja Pak, layarnya dia aja. Gak usah pakai kita. Oh dia maunya sebelah belakang. Kita pakai kakak. Ya udah. Ya.
Yuk Mas, rapi semua, foto bareng Bapak Ibu. Mbak. Yuk foto. Jangan nutup sini aja.
Yang kode kan itu kan standby. Please bear with us because all the participants also want to join the photo sessions.
Sure.
Diatur dong, diatur ininya.
Oh ya, agak maju ya. Nih.
Jadi bisa kayak gini. Turunkan aja bagian tidak. Di bawah deh. Lepas itu nanti. 2, 3.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Assalamualaikum.
you so much. Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih kepada Dr. Said Fauzan yang telah membantu jalannya diskusi panel, dan juga kami ucapkan terima kasih yang amat banyak kepada Bapak Umar Oseni yang telah menyampaikan pembahasan yang sangat-sangat bermanfaat.
Thank you to Mr. Syed for leading this discussion panel. Also, thank you to Mr. Omar Usani for the amazing presentation.
Dengan selesainya diskusi panel pada hari ini, maka berakhir pula rangkaian acara kita dari pagi hingga saat ini.
From the end of the panel of this discussion, it is also the end of the agenda on this day.
Kami mengucapkan amat terima kasih kepada para peserta, tamu undangan, serta narasumber yang telah memberikan pembahasan yang sangat luar biasa.
To all the audience and the guests, thank you so much for your attention.
Menusuk jarum di pohon bonsai, menanam bonsai di samping beri.
Acara kali ini telah selesai, sampai jumpa di esok hari.
Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.